This video will show you how to do the valve clearance adjustment on a Kymco Super 8. This is a little more of an advanced job, but anybody with reasonable mechanical ability can do it. Start by removing the seat. There's 7 fasteners that hold the seat in place. 2 bolts in the back, these 2 nuts in the middle, 2 more bolts in the front, and this large flathead screw. All the nuts and bolts are 10 millimeters. Simply loosen them with the socket or socket driver. Once those are out of place, use a large flathead screwdriver here to get the center screw out. And it's a good idea, since all these fasteners are different, to lay them out so you know which are where. The ones with the loose washers go in the back, the 2 nuts go in the middle, the bolts with the flanges go in the front, and the large screw goes in the front center. It's also not a bad idea to put some anti-seize lubricant on them to make it easier to get out next time. Once those are out, you can simply lift the seat out of the frame. The next thing we have to do is get the battery panel and front body panel off. Now there's 2 screws that hold the battery panel in, located there. Start by unscrewing them using just a Phillips head screwdriver. And at this point, if you can get the battery panel off, you are a far better scooter mechanic than I am. What I have to do is loosen the front body panel. I do that by snapping these tabs out of place. Be careful, these are just cheap plastic. They just have a little lip on them that snaps them into place. So run your hand down there and pop those loose. And then once that front panel is loose, that should give you enough leeway to remove the battery panel. Again, it's not exactly easy, but oh, there it goes, finally. Now disconnect the battery. Start by removing the negative lead. You can do this with the socket or also with a Phillips head screwdriver. And once the negative lead is out of the way, move on to the positive lead. Be careful, there's a nut on the other side of those bolts that if you balance the battery just right, you can leave in place. Undo the belt that holds the battery in place and lift the battery out. Again, be careful those nuts don't fall out from the other side of the battery terminals there. Now we're going to remove the valve head cover. There are 4 bolts that hold the valve head cover in place, and then there are 2 nuts down here by the tube for the secondary burn. I usually start by removing this hose on the top. There's also a hose on the bottom, but we can leave that one in place. I'll just route that over the top of the frame member here. And then you can work your way around and loosen those 4 bolts that were illustrated earlier. This one you can get to, you got to bend the body panel a little bit, but you can usually get in there if you have an extender on your ratchet without having to take that panel off. You should note that the bolts are different, so you definitely want to set these out in some arrangement so that you can remember where each one goes. And once all those are disconnected, you can simply lift the valve cover off, leaving that hose attached, and set it aside. In order to get the feeler gauge in, it's also a good idea to remove this little electrical device here, take out the 8mm bolt that holds it in place, and then it should just slide off and you can set it off to the side here. Now we have to find top dead center to adjust the valve clearance. You can stick a socket through this hole in the fan cover, and there's a nut inside there you can use to turn the engine over. As you crank the engine over, you'll see the valves open and close. There's the exhaust valve opening, and there's the intake valve opening. You want to measure the valve clearance when the engine's at top dead center. If you know how the valves work, you can sort of eyeball it by watching them go in and out, but more reliably you can use the markings on the cam here. There's a large hole in the center and 2 small holes on the side. When they're aligned like this, you're at top dead center. You should also be able to move the rocker arm slightly there. Take a feeler gauge, and you're looking for 0.004 inches clearance, and insert it there between the tappet and the valve. There's a close-up so you can see exactly what you're measuring. If it's out of adjustment, you need to loosen the lock nut, and then you need to turn the adjuster. That's the threaded piece there with the square end. You may need to use a pliers to do so, but if you're lucky, you can just use your hand here. And once you've got the adjustment right, go ahead and lock the lock nut back down. Note this will tighten it up slightly, so it's a good idea to take and measure the clearance again to make sure that you've got it right after the lock nut is snug. Repeat this procedure for the exhaust valve below, and once done, slide the valve cover back into place. Put the bolts in and finger tighten, and then don't forget to reconnect this hose here as well. Now when you're tightening down those 4 bolts and those 2 nuts, be extremely careful. the metal in the valve cover is very soft, and if you tighten to the spec in the book, which is 16 pounds, you can have this little oops shown here. So since you don't want that, I would recommend at most 10 pounds. You just need to get that rubber seal that's in the valve cover to seal down and prevent any oil leakage. So be very careful when tightening these. Remember the little electrical connection you removed? Put that back in, and put the battery back in. Now's a good time to start the scooter too and make sure it's actually running before you assemble the rest of the bodywork. Once everything's good, go ahead and snap the body panels back in, and then screw the battery cover back into place. And once that's done, add the seat. Be careful that the lip fits snugly under the seat, and then tighten the fasteners. And that's it. You've adjusted the valves. Get out there and enjoy the ride.